Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the fourth MAP webinar. I'm Popoy Del Rosario. I've been assigned as the MC for today. I'm the chairman of MAP's Inclusive Growth Committee, which is the organizer for this webinar. I'd like to ask everyone to stay comfortable as we're about to start. May I now request everyone to bow your heads in prayer. Most merciful God, we come in our weakness. We come with our uncertainties. We come with trust. For you alone are our hope and strength. We ask you to eradicate the virus which is causing havoc in our midst. You alone can stop it. Each day reminds us of your never-ending grace. There is no end, just new beginnings. You are alive in all of us. Because we have hope living in our souls. We ask you to give comfort to those who have lost a loved one and to welcome those who have passed on to your heavenly paradise. As we began to win as one in the South Asian Games, so also, dear God, we begin to heal as one in this COVID crisis. Now we are beginning to grow as one in this time of uncertainty. With you, our ever faithful God. Amen. Let us now pause for a moment. Take the eternal repose of MAP member Robert Bob Sears, former executive director of AmCham Philippines, who passed away on April 30 at the age of 76. Amen. Let us now place our right hand on our chest and sing the Philippine national anthem together. Thank you. At this point, may I request the president of MAP, the senior partner and EXCO member of ACRA, Attorney Francis Lim, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Popoy. Good morning, everyone. I hope that you and your families continue to be healthy and safe while you are on an extended lockdown. On behalf of the MAP Board of Governors, I welcome all of you to this MAP webinar. Many thanks to MAP Inclusive Growth Committee Chair Popoy Del Rosario, Vice Chair Alex Cabrera, and Governor in Charge Sai Tanco for putting together this MAP webinar on helping the MSMEs survive the pandemic. I understand that there are around 200 registrants, and this is one of the better attended webinars. For the benefit of our guests and members who are participating for the first time, this is the fourth webinar that MAP has conducted in a span of 5 weeks. Among the webinar topics that we have already discussed for our members were responding to COVID-19 on April 2, leading to the COVID-19 on April 14, managing the workforce today and preparing them for the new normal held on April 17, and developing health protocols for the workforce re-entry held on April 24. On top of these webinars, we also partnered with other organizations to deliver topics of interest to our members. Of note, the topic, Rise as One, Economic Recovery Through Fiscal Stimulus, held on April 29, where we partnered with the Shareholders Association of the Philippines during its annual 2020 summit. We have also ongoing partnerships with the Procurement and Supply Institute of Asia, or PASA, on various supply chain topics, and with the business world on COVID-19 related topics. Please watch out for announcements on these webinars and take time to attend them as they discuss topics that may be of interest to you and your businesses. This webinar is particularly important for MAP, as MSMEs constitute 20% of our total membership. MSMEs are the backbone and lifeblood of our economy. They comprise around 99.5% of business establishments in the country, employing more than 62% of our workforce and contributing around 30%, or at least 6 trillion pesos of our GDP. Unfortunately, the MSMEs are the most vulnerable segment of the business sector. It is thus extremely important that we help our SMEs survive this pandemic, and hence this webinar. This webinar is not the only thing that MAP has been doing or is doing for the SME sector of our economy. The MAP has made MSME specific recommendations on what should be included in the stimulus package now under consideration by Congress. As your president, I've been devoting time to assist the Economic Affairs Committee of the House of Representatives in the formulation of the stimulus package. I can tell you that the SMSEs are a major component of the stimulus package to help the sector recover from the present pandemic. Among these are the preference in guarantee to be given by the Philippine Guarantee Corporation for MSME loans and technical assistance or grants by the TTI to the MSME sector. Let us all keep our fingers crossed that the provisions affording assistance to the sector will find their way into the law. In closing, thank you one and all for attending this webinar. And thank you most especially to our speakers, Bobby Claudio, Joby de Mayuga, J.D. Minagracia, and our actors, Bernie Berondo and Ana Catherine Bodestin, for participating and sharing their time with us. Let us all learn from the experiences and insights, and let us all do our share in helping the MSME sector survive the pandemic. Keep well, everyone, and enjoy the webinar. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Francis. Before we start the presentations, let me just emphasize the following important house rules. Number one, all participants are automatically muted, including your cameras, videos, which have been put to off. Number two, your questions can be submitted through the Q&A button that you see on your screen. Our Q&A moderator, Alex Cabrera, will then read the questions on your behalf. Number 3, you will be able to see the panelists and speakers and their presentations, but you will not see the other participants. And finally, number 4, if you lose connection at any point, you can join again by repeating the logging in instructions for this particular webinar. At this point, I would like to thank our speakers and reactors for giving us their time for this webinar, which we hope will enlighten everyone in helping a very important sector of our economy, the MSMEs, survive the pandemic. For the information of everyone, MSMEs contribute 15 billion pesos a year and provide employment to at least 6 million people. Just to reiterate, our objectives for MSMEs in this webinar are the following. Number 1, we want to give them the sense of control by making them understand what they are facing and what their strengths are. We want to give them also a sense of predictability by informing them of what to expect in the future. And number 3, we want to give them the sense of efficacy by empowering them with skills and knowledge so that they can survive and sustain their own businesses. Today, we have with us the following speakers. Number 1, Mr. Robert Bobby Claudio, Sr., whose topic is how to save the MSE sector. Number 2, Mr. Joby Gavino De Leon de Mayuga, who will discuss access to bank loans and government assistance. And number 3, Ms. Mary J.T. Rojas de Vinagracia, who will lecture on working capital and resiliency. Our reactors today will be Mr. Bernie Berondo, the manager of Glow Corporation, and Mrs. Ana Catherine Narciso Bodestin, the COO of the Apparel House Company, Inc. The last 45 minutes of this webinar will be devoted to answering the questions from the participants. So may I now call the first speaker, the chairman of the Quorum Group, Ovis Group, and the past president of the Philippine Retailers Association, and my classmate from LaSalle. Please welcome Mr. Roberto Bobby Claudio, Sr. Bobby, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Popoy. Good morning, everyone. Let me start by just simply simplifying who the MSMEs are and why we want to help them, what is happening, and what we can help in terms of recommending in terms of what they can do for their business. MSMEs comprise 99% of our business sector. 5.7 million jobs are employed and 35% value added to the economy. The MSMEs number in different enterprises. Now, because of the limited time and the large universe of categories, I will not discuss by industry or by product category, but by or business format, but rather refer to the whole MSE universe as a one business sector. Next slide, please. Whether you're a fine dining restaurant, carinderia, specialty store, sari-sari store, food producer, vulcanizing shop, vegetable dealer, delivery services, or sporting goods store, chances are we are all MSMEs. According to some definition, if you're not in the top 1,000 or you're not in the large taxpayers BIR list, you are most probably an MSME. So what's so important? I think the government is now talking about reopening. So what is very important is to be able to prepare for this reopening and prepare based on what we can control. The most important aspect of this control now and being able to comply with the reopening will be the ability to comply with all health and medical protocols. Complying with social distancing, masks, 6 feet spacing, COVID testing, sanitizers, deep cleaning. All of this will come into play in your ability to be able to reopen and start business. We are looking at proposing to government planners that instead of classifying who will open based on essential and non-essential commodities, we would like to recommend to the government planners that business be open to all. The guidelines will be who can comply and who cannot comply with the health requirements. Those who cannot comply should remain closed. The next one will be the focus on existing product and market segment. This is not the time to test new concepts, new products, or new variants or different models. Stick to what you're doing now and see how best you can reconfigure your business to adapt to the changing, as they said, the new normal. Third, develop a strong e-commerce potential. I think one good thing that happened out of this lockdown, the e-commerce potential, even website, Facebook, Instagram, just simply social media, or even texting from one friend to the other. One great example were the mango growers in Pangasinan. They had 2,000 kilos that they just harvested, and they could not go through the channels of distribution. They texted the friend texted her friends, and the friends texted and saw it on Facebook, and by the end of the day, all 2,000 kilos were sold. So there is that is the potential now. So all businesses, whether you're medium, small, or even micro, you should be able to start doing something on the e-commerce platforms. Fourth, plan based on reduced sales and revenues. Sales will not happen. We were down, we were zero revenue for the last 2 months. Malls will not reopen completely. They will gradually open, and so do some of the stores. Customers will not come. Reduced revenues per day. GCQ was implemented starting Monday on some provinces, and some malls open. We are experiencing only 20% of what we were doing before the lockdown or compared to last year. So people are still not comfortable going to stores or even to the mall. So expect a reduced revenue. Fifth, realize that expenses will surpass revenues. Low sales, and most of all, cost will continue to mount. Very, very important consideration right now. So don't expect that you are going to go back to profitability and be able to meet all your expenses. How long this will happen? Us retailers, particularly our survey in the Philippine Retailers Association, we said, forget 2020. You just have to stay strong and stay fit, manage our resources to fight another day. Next slide, please. So how do you manage to do the next thing, which is under the new normal, we need to recover. So instead of classifying by category, I'll just classify by function. All eating places will have reduced seating capacity. Spacing will be important. They're recommending 6 feet per person or for all the people coming in. So seating will be reduced. Restaurants and other eating places may resort to reservations so that they can control the entry. Even limited or even seating time, just like in a cruise. may 6 o'clock sitting time, may 8 o'clock sitting time. That way they can do the social distancing and still accommodate enough so that they can gain some more revenue. But again, expect a lower sales per square meter. Retail establishments, whether you're a store, you're a sari-sari store, a specialty store, or a mall store, again, there will be reduced hours and limited entry. Those with two or more entries, entry and exit doors may have to be separated. You may have to provide covered or comfortable waiting areas where seating 6 feet apart can be accommodated. We are looking at for most retailers to install sneeze guards. These are plexiglass or glass barriers to separate the customer and the cashier, so there is no direct contact while transactions are made in the cashier's counter. We're looking also at some ultraviolet money, paper money scanners to be able to control virus in the handling of paper money. Retailers will also rely now on curbside pickup, order online and fulfill and either pick up curbside in the mall, outside the mall, or outside the store. And then, of course, ordering online and for delivering fulfillment by delivery services. This is another recommendation which we would like to recommend to the government. Open up all businesses, all sectors, if they can do online. That way, they are able to reduce the contact. In doing online services, the retailers are able to comply with the medical protocols. Number 3, the manufacturers. Of course, there will be reduced raw materials, ingredient supplies due to supply problems from their suppliers and the manufacturers. So they will have to cope up with lower sales. Yeah. But in the meantime, we will have to cope up with rental, manpower costs, utilities, and even e-commerce investments or capex that will have to be done. For tourism services, they will have to rely on local tourists. We do not expect a majority of foreign tourists coming in or getting back to our normal levels. And then workers to seek assistance from government tourism agencies. And of course, the micro enterprises. The micro will have to adjust to prevailing market conditions, avail of the government subsidies and stimulus package and even amelioration packages. This is going to be difficult for the micro because they do not have credibility yet to the bank. So banks will be reluctant. So micro will have to rely on the resources of the government. The medium and the small may rely with the bank. And I will leave that portion of the talk this morning to Jade and the other speakers who will talk about the relationships with banks and the government agencies. Slide, please. Next slide, please. So where are the MSEs now and where will it be under the some, as I said earlier, some of the malls already opened under GCC in the provinces. Before the COVID, or before early February, before the COVID lockdown, we were already experiencing a 30 to 50% drop in revenue. During the lockdown, it became 100%, zero sales from March, April, up to now in May. And first week of May, some malls opened in the provinces. We're not even seeing anywhere between higher than 20% the recovery on the sales and revenue. People will are still reluctant to go to the malls and even to the stores. Employees, utilities, suppliers, landlords, and taxes, and so forth will continue to be paid. What we sold in early part of this year was already paid, which are already due, and we were supposed to expect the sales for March and April to pay those expenses, and we have zero revenues. We do not have cash flow is already a major concern. Working capital is depleted. Cash flow has turned negative. So we need to talk to all our employees, our utilities, our suppliers, landlords, taxes, to share the pain. This is called the Sharing the Pain Initiative. Lahat tayo affected, so all of our partners, even the stakeholders, no dividends muna, no unexpected capex to be given to share to stakeholders. So very, very important to manage cash flow now and secure additional working capital. I think this is already what is happening, and there is no solution to this without having to find additional working capital. Next slide, please. So how will MSEs survive? As I said, managing the cash flow is very important. Generate the revenues, schedule payments, do installment plans to your suppliers, reduce capex, all unnecessary expenses, delay expansion plans. For medium enterprises, banks should be able to help and refinance and fund new loans at generous rates. Mga kliyente naman na ninyo yan dati. They have had good paying capabilities. Now it's time that they need you, the banks. I presume banks should be more generous in providing the necessary cash flow. But my latest information, some banks are reluctant because they are worried about the ability of the MSEs to repay existing loans. They're not even willing to discuss new loans. Now, for small and micro enterprises, government financial institutions should government now look at additional stimulus, economic packages, amelioration programs, so that they can resume whatever they can do as far as operations are concerned. Okay, let me just end this portion with a quote from an article that came out today called A Vaccine Against Social Collapse by Cesar Purisima, Laura Lacey, and Harvey Chua. Came out today. It says, the most effective solutions exercise preferential option for the poor in the economic policy, directly focusing financial firepower for the vulnerable. For the good economic reason, this is our vaccine against social collapse. The most popular of these policy measures, direct cash transfer, wage subsidies, loans, and guarantees for MSMEs. Target those who have the least and those who have the most to lose when the economy takes a pause. Thank you. That's a portion of my talk. I'll be willing to take questions later.
Thank you, Bobby. As usual, from a LASALite, very enlightening. At this point, may I now call on our second speaker, the EVP and Head of Development Lending Sector of Development Bank of the Philippines, or DBP, where I am proud to say I was formerly the Chairman, President, and CEO. Let us all welcome our next speaker, Mr. Jose Gabino Joby de Leon de Mayuga. Joby.
Thank you, Popoy. Good morning to everyone. I'm Joby de Mayuga, Head of the Development Lending Sector of the Development Bank of the Philippines. For this portion of this morning's webinar, I'm here to give a quick overview of the assistance programs made available to MSMEs by the national government through its different agencies, as well as through its financial institutions, to be able to assist you during this ECQ period and beyond. Next slide, please. My presentation is divided into three parts. First is that overview of what the national government agencies have been doing. Second, the response of the government financial institutions to augment and implement the national government's initiatives. And finally, additional programs that are currently being deliberated upon in the House of Representatives pursuant to the proposed Economic Stimulus Act. Next slide, please. Let me start off by saying that the national government recognizes the important role that MSMEs play in the Philippine economy. Both Bobby and Popoy had earlier already indicated certain statistics, and let me just repeat them, that MSMEs account for 99.5% of the total number of establishments, employing about 62.8% of the total labor force, and contributing at least 35.7% of the total value added to the economy. In recognition of this vital role, the national government has sought to cushion the effect of the COVID-19 crisis through the immediate implementation of the social amelioration program, such as the CAMP, or the COVID-19 Adjustment Measures Program of the Department of Labor and Employment, which provides one-time assistance of up to 5,000 pesos for workers of private companies. This is complemented by the TUPAD program, where the disadvantaged or displaced workers are provided emergency employment for a maximum of 30 days. Furthermore, and more recently, what was launched was the Small Business Wage Subsidy Program through the DTI, SSS, and BIR, where additional funds amounting to 5,000 to 8,000 are released to employees of affected businesses. And DBP is very proud to actually be part of that program as the disbursements are coursed through us. In relation to the agriculture sector, there are also assistance given to rice farmers, which also provides a cash subsidy of up to 5,000 pesos to small rice farmers to help them through this crisis. Other forms of assistance are also made in addition, beyond these four that I've highlighted here, which include scholarship programs through TESDA, as well as specific programs by the Department of Tourism to help infrastructure-related projects for tourism amounting to about 5 billion pesos. Can we click the slide, please? Specifically for banks, the BSP has also instituted a number of programs to increase liquidity. Sorry, can you go back? To increase the liquidity as well as entice the lending programs for MSMEs. This include reductions in the reserve requirements, as well as allowing new loans for MSMEs, those that were granted from March 8, to be alternative compliance to these reduced reserve requirements. The BSP has also reduced the risk weighting of MSME loans from the current 75% to 50%, and have furthermore approved the assignment of a zero risk weighting to loans that are guaranteed not only by the Philippine Guarantee Corporation, but also to include those guaranteed by the Agricultural Guarantee Fund, as well as the Agricultural Credit Policy Council. So there are many. It's not only the government banks that are being assisted through these programs of the BSP. Even private banks are being enticed to actually provide additional funding for MSMEs. Next slide, please. So under the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, the most important assistance that was given to corporations is really the deferment of payments. So all payments that actually fall due during the ECQ period are mandatorily deferred to come in only after the ECQ is lifted. And this deferment are without any interest on interest, fees, or charges. Any accrued interest that is deferred can actually be spread over the remaining life of the loan, while any principal that would have fallen due are actually added to the end of the period of the loan, effectively extending the maturity date. Next slide, please. For those of you who are actually clients of the government financial institutions, primarily Land Bank and DBP, we do have specific programs over and above what was mandated by the Bayanihan Law. No, we understand that liquidity is the critical need, and as a result, we have actually programs to be able to provide further deferments beyond what was required by the law, and in addition, also provide additional funding. No, so for what you see here on the slide are actually the deferments and the possible restructuring that we can provide our existing clients. No. So in the case of Land Bank, their deferments can actually go for up to 1 year. In our case, our deferments can go up to 6 months. In terms of the new loans, both in the case of Land Bank as well as ourselves, in the case of Land Bank, they can go up to 10 years. With us, it can also go up to 10 years. However, the difference between the two of us is really more on the fixing, on the rate fixing. No, where in the case of Land Bank, they rate fix for up to 3 years. In our case, we rate fix for up to 5 years. So aside for assistance being given to our existing borrowers, the next slide will show that there are actually funding that's being made available also to new borrowers. No, so in addition to Land Bank and DBP, there are other entities for which funding is also made available. In the case of the Small Business Corporation, they have a program called CARES. No, and as shown there in the slide, they can actually provide funding of up to 200,000 for the micro and up to 500,000 for the medium-sized companies. No, for up to 2 years. In the case of Land Bank, under their iRescue program, they can fund up to 85% of the actual need. So therefore, the equity that's required is 15%. And it can be up to 5 years. For DBP, under our response program, our equity requirement is slightly less. It's up to 5% only, so we can finance up to 95%, and our loans can go up to 10 years. And to complement all these lending programs, there's also a guarantee program that PhilGuarantee is providing. What this does, as was mentioned earlier, was that because they're zero risk weighted, the amount that they guarantee becomes helpful for the banks, because instead of being risk rated 100% or 50%, it now becomes zero. So they can guarantee up to a maximum of 50 million per borrower, covering up to 50% of the principal amount of the loan, for up to about 5 years. Okay, next slide, please. So those are the existing programs. We know that obviously these are not enough, and of course we've also been hearing comments from our borrowers as well as other entities that maybe there should be even more assistance. Possibly zero interest or negative interest loans. Now, these are things that are actually being discussed in Congress at the moment. No? So there's an economic stimulus package that's being discussed by Congress, and some of the things that are in the latest version of the law are what I'm showing here on the slide. No? So part of what they're discussing as assistance to MSMEs is grants that are going to be given to DTI up to about 10 billion. And this is primarily for education, training, and counseling to be able to help the MSMEs improve their resiliency in the post-COVID-19 era. Approximately 25 billion is being proposed to further augment the lending programs of the Small Business Corporation. Again, to be able to help the banks lend, you will see an additional 128 billion that's being proposed for PhilGuarantee to augment their guarantee programs. And here is, I think, where a lot of the discussions are, and we're also looking forward to this. There's discussions of about 200 billion in interest-free loans that should be given to Land Bank and DBP. While we still have to see the actual implementing guidelines of this proposal, we're already gearing up internally in our organization as to how to do this. Just for information, this is not the first time that funds are actually being coursed through the DBP. At the moment, we do have some specialized programs, like, for example, the PUV modernization program, where funds from the national government are actually coursed to us that provides subsidies. So in the case of the PUV program, the 5% equity that's required under that program came from the national government through the budget, and that was given to us. And when we release our loans, then that we also release that as part of the subsidy. So we would expect that maybe these interest-free loans would probably act that same way, but of course we'll await the actual guidelines. Next slide, please. So in addition to those general assistance programs, the proposed Economic Stimulus Act also targets specific sectors and programs specific to these sectors. So from what we see in the current iteration of the bill, there are funds of up to about 10 billion for the agri-fishery sector, an additional 43 billion for the tourism industry, about 66 billion for the import and export industries. And finally, there are some discussions on trade policy measures, particularly with regard to the tariffs for essential imported materials. So next slide, please. So in closing, let me just introduce the contact persons within DBP that you can approach should you be interested in our DBP response program. For those enterprises whose registered offices are located in the National Capital Region and looking for loans of up to about 100 million, please contact Dan Gonzalez from our SME department here in the head office. While those who are looking for loans that are above 100 million, please contact Jean Adamos, also here in our head office, as she heads our middle market department. For those enterprises located in the northern and central Luzon area, please contact Kathy Camarao, who's based in our Bulacan office. And for those in southern Luzon, it will be Zaldi Monarquia, who's based in Lucena. For the Visayas, please contact Marisa Anino, who's based in Cebu. And for Northern Mindanao, it would be Sinyo Narisma, who's actually based in Cagayan de Oro. And finally, for those in Western and Southern Mindanao, please contact Annie Veloso, who's based in Davao. They will be more than willing to answer your queries. We also have a lot of information in our website as well as on our Facebook page. So please do visit our website. It's www.dbp.ph, and our Facebook account is at fb.com/DEVBankPHL. So as a last slide, I hope that I've been able to provide you with some helpful information as we all work together to beat the economic effects of this pandemic. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions later when we go to the Q&A section. Thank you.
Thank you, Joby. And as expected from someone working in DBP, that was very informative. And now may I call on our third speaker, the Managing Partner for Deals and Corporate Finance of Isla Lipana, PwC Philippines, where I am also currently the Senior Executive Director. Let us all welcome Mrs. Mary J.T. Rojas de Vinagracia. Jade.
Thank you so much, Popoy, and good morning, everyone. I think we can all agree that this pandemic is bringing about massive uncertainty that continue to challenge the core of every business and has surprised even the most experienced business executives. So what is different about this crisis? Of course, the Philippines is not a stranger to crises. We are visited by typhoons 20 or more times a year, and we also get our fair share of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. What started as a health issue has now evolved into an economic and financial crisis impacting everyone. So it has a massive scope with already over 3.5 million people infected globally in about 200 countries. But unlike other crises which came and went away quickly, it has now been more than 5 months since the first case began in Wuhan in November, and we still do not have a visual of the end game. We still do not know a lot about this virus, and there is just so much uncertainty. So how far out should we then plan? What should we do now when there are so many unknowns? They say that we are heading towards a new normal, but what is this new normal going to be? What we know for sure is that the answer will be different at the individual level. And while there may be general guidelines, but the responses have to be tailored to different circumstances. Since there is no precedent to this, there are no off-the-shelf solutions. So what can we offer here is a structured process of problem solving. The Harvard Business School refers to these as the OODA loop, so OODA. It means observe, orient, decide, and act problem solving process. It can also be called design thinking, but what this is really is an iterative and agile way of problem solving. It starts with forming the right team, and I understand that this can be a challenge if you are an MSME or a sole proprietorship. But ideally, this team will be composed of people who know your business very well, know your customers and suppliers, and who definitely understand your company's priorities and values, and who are committed to take you through this pandemic. The first order of business of this team is to establish the facts. What do you know? Acknowledge that you may not know everything, but that you will know enough about your state of operations, your capabilities, your cash position, and your obligations. Next, identify the options available. So weigh the pros and cons. So for instance, if you've forecasted that you will run out of cash in 2 months, what options can you take? You can either borrow from a bank or take out from your own savings, sell some assets, perhaps run a promotional sale to drive up revenues, or even lay off some employees. So these are some of the options that you can take. But then after that, you then perform a scenario planning, or what we call a what-if analysis for each of these options identified. So in our example earlier, what if the bank will not approve your loan or asset prices are too low? What will you do then? Having this scenario planning will guide you in choosing the most optimal course of action. After which, when you then execute. In this whole process, new information may come to your attention. New situations may emerge, either external or internal, because of the action that you have taken. You may then need to adjust your plans and go through the process all over again. And that is exactly why this is called a loop. You'll probably say that you don't have to go through this process. You'll just wing it as it happens, as most entrepreneurs do. However, in times of crisis, things happen really fast. And unless you've thought through your decisions, you may end up not choosing the optimal ones. During this time as well, it is critical that you communicate. It's important to engage with stakeholders early, both internal and external, to let them know of your situation as well as your plans. So this include, maintaining a regular cadence of communication. In crisis situations, it is common to meet with different stakeholders at least once a day. So what are the business owners and management telling us? We conducted a quick survey to better understand the situation of our clients as well as our friends. And I'd like to present some of the key highlights this morning. As of the start of the week, we already received about 300 responses, and 59 of which came from MSMEs. 44% of MSMEs, compared to just 30% of large businesses, cited working capital management as their top concern. And I'm pretty sure that you can relate to that as well. That was also mentioned by Bobby earlier in his presentation. Further, 39% of MSMEs say that they are in need of financing. So this is a case for Joby. And the saying that the cash is king is really important during these turbulent times. The concern for liquidity continues even when the ECQ is lifted. So 43% said that they still anticipate liquidity issues even after the lockdown. These concerns can include not knowing what your cash position is, not having sufficient control over your cash. It has also become harder to collect from customers, as I am sure you have experienced. They themselves are holding on to their cash. There is also the problem of not being able to distinguish critical suppliers, as the tendency is to simply delay payments to everyone. With much reduced sales and even zero for some, the anxiety on how to improve liquidity is putting a toll on business owners and executives, particularly if there are obligations to be met, contractual or otherwise. And these concerns are very real, as I'm sure you've experienced them yourselves. We are all experiencing this, though perhaps in varying degrees. How we respond will not only determine how we will survive this crisis, but will also lay the foundation on how we will thrive post-crisis. So let me take a break at this point and let's take a quick call as to how long your cash runway is. Now, I'll ask MAP to facilitate this, and this should be very quick. So the question is, how long before you run out of cash? Joanne? So you should be seeing a polling system on your screen, and just choose one of the four answers. No? Popoy, is it now showing o hindi pa?
Hindi pa
Jade,
rin
it's ongoing. It's ongoing. Participants
There
can
you
answer
go.
the question.
There you go. So maybe if we can just give you a few seconds to respond, no? Arnold, if as soon as we've reached about 80 responses, maybe we can show the results.
Okay.
So the choices are, in terms of your cash runway, is it less than less than 2 months, 2 to 3 months, 4 to 5 months, or 6 months and longer? So if you're an MSME, we'd appreciate getting your response to this, just so for us to get some statistics. Arnold, do we have the results now? It could take like a couple of seconds. There you go. So amazingly, actually, 32% of the respondents said that it's 6 months and longer. So we were talking about this earlier, and I suppose that can be expected for MAP members. No, you have a lot more cash runway, but 68%, of course, said that they have shorter than 5 months, and that's not long enough. And maybe if we can just close this and move on to the next. The recovery can take longer, and therefore some measures will have to be taken to manage that. No? So how do we better manage working capital? So these are practical actions that you can take, and are based on experiences that we have with our own clients as well. We also follow them in PwC whenever applicable. First, it's important to understand your cash position. How long or short is your cash runway? Having a short-term 13-week rolling cash forecast will aid your cash management decisions. These forecasts should be granular or detailed enough so you will see where and when to expect cash inflows and cash outflows. This will show you as well when you will run out of cash. You will also need to increase your cash inflows, no? Needless to say. Intensify your collection efforts while, of course, balancing long-term customer relationships. Based on our own experience, we find that personally calling your clients is effective. So capitalize on your relationships with them, but also try and understand their situation as well. Sorry, MAP, can I share my screen? There you go, sorry about that. If need be, you have to also take a look at your quick assets like money market instruments and other short-term investments. No? Of course, just be wary that prices might be depressed at this time. So only consider disposing them if and when really necessary. You also can consider discounting or factoring your receivables. There are fintech companies who are doing this, and if you're interested, we can certainly make introductions. Also identify other fund sources, including government subsidies. As discussed by Joby earlier, the government has prepared a number of stimulus packages for MSMEs, so check whether you and your employees will qualify. At the same time, do exercise prudence in your cash outflows. However, simply withholding payment to everyone is also not good advice. Remember, these are the same suppliers with whom you will continue to deal with even post-ECQ. No? So identify critical suppliers, those who will impact your supply chain, prioritize them and negotiate better terms when you can. Also, continue to find other ways to conserve cash, like postponing non-essential expenses or delaying certain capital expenditures. Also, know your inventory levels. If you are experiencing a slowdown in the movement of your inventory because of the quarantine, then some actions that you can take may include offering promotions to encourage more sales, finding new channels of distribution, most likely through online. So as Bobby mentioned earlier, Facebook is actually quite effective because most people are just at home and they are often opening their social media. So that's what's happening to me as well. I see a lot of advertisements in terms of food deliveries, and I usually get tempted. So this has been as well what a number of entrepreneurs have been doing. So going online, marketing through social media. Some new entrepreneurs have even emerged going hyper-local by selling their products like home-cooked meals in a micro-location or just within villages or condominium units. You will also need to adjust your ordering lead time, either lengthen or shorten it depending on logistical constraints and on the demand of your product. So some of the responses that we have gotten from our clients in terms of the difficulties that they are facing now is, of course, the availability of logistics. No? Consider as well substitute in case certain materials cannot be sourced. Also, do some what-if scenario planning. Like, what if you don't collect from a major account? Will you need short-term financing? When? What if sales drop by 80%? Until when will you then be able to keep paying your employees? So doing the scenario planning will help you to develop alternative solutions after careful consideration and prepare you for what may happen well in advance. Now, if you are in need of financing, then you will have to start talking to your bankers as well. If you foresee that you'll break certain covenants like liquidity ratios or debt equity ratios, negotiate for waivers already. Again, a short-term cash flow forecast will already alert you about this before it actually happens. That way, you can take necessary actions early enough. It is also important that you assure your bankers and creditors that you are experiencing just a temporary liquidity issue and that your business remains viable in the medium to long term. So when bankers will evaluate all these financing proposals, they will definitely assess whether your business is still viable over the long term and you can continue to repay your loan. No? In some cases,
Excuse me, Jade, last 2 minutes.
All right, Popoy. In some cases, we've seen business owners who have decided to draw on their existing credit lines, even though they are still liquid. So they believe that the interest or the cost of funds is a small insurance to pay than the alternative of running out of cash or going out of business. No? So you may also identify any surplus assets that you may have, not for disposal, but possibly for collateral or security in case you need financing. So based on our survey, 48% of the MSMEs also said that they have resorted to stretching payables as a way of preserving cash. As earlier mentioned, we just have to be careful that we are being strategic about this. Inevitably, some businesses also have to resort to either reducing manpower or reducing compensation at this time. And we definitely have to be realistic about this. A number of businesses who are not prepared and who cannot easily pivot and adjust to circumstances will not survive these crises. And that is something that we cannot sugarcoat. The impact of this is so massive, particularly for certain sectors like airlines. Others have also explored restructuring or refinancing their loans, while some have employed other distribution channels. Post-ECQ, the primary concern shifts to health and safety of employees, and this is consistent with the survey results from large corporations as well, which is probably why one of the priorities of businesses is to institute more flexible working arrangements post-ECQ. Other actions that they will take include investing in digital transformation. So I'd like to highlight that COVID-19 has accelerated the shift from physical to digital. And this applies to interactions with customers through online marketing and sales channels, and the way companies operate, like remote working or work from home arrangements. So COVID-19 has forced businesses to revisit their business plans and strategies in light of what is now called the new normal. No? So business models and product delivery have changed. So it's important for you to adjust and pivot given the new market conditions. So we've already said many times that this pandemic is unprecedented. So the situation is highly uncertain and there are no off-the-shelf or ready-made answers. So address your specific problems following the framework that I've mentioned earlier. Manage your cash and working capital, communicate with shareholders and other stakeholders, and do not be paralyzed by the fear of uncertainty. Just please trust the process, rework the problem as needed, and engage in iterative and agile problem solving. So I leave it there. Thank you. And I'll be open to questions as well during the Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Jade. And as expected from a senior partner of PwC, that was very empowering.
Thank you so much, Popoy.
At this point, may I now call on our first reactor, the manager of Glow Corporation. Let us all welcome Mr. Bernie Berondo.
Jade, please unshare your screen.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Bernie. I'm the General Manager of Global Organic and Wellness Corporation. We are a social enterprise. This is owned by farmer organizations, NGOs, and individuals who are advocates of organic farming and sustainable agriculture. So we are now in our 10th years of operation, and can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
So we are into marketing of essentials, organic rice, muscovado sugar, coconut sugar, and other community-based commodities. And we get our supplies all over the Philippines from Ifugao up to Mindanao. So problem of mobility is one of our major concerns. What's the effect of this lockdown in our operation? Next slide, please. Next slide. Balik po. Yeah, actually, ito yung surprising for us because our sales actually jumped from the previous years because siguro of the panic buying in supermarkets. Our sales jumped to 17% from the same period last year. So, madaming mga orders from us, but unfortunately, hindi namin ma-supply lahat because of the disruption nga dun sa transportation and yung reduced mobility. You know? We only have two delivery trucks, so medyo mahirap sa amin to serve all supermarkets in Metro Manila. So we actually serve 600 supermarkets nationwide, so hindi namin nasa-serve yung iba. Mas nagko-concentrate kami ngayon sa Metro Manila. Although we have increased sales, problema namin ngayon ay hindi nga namin na-serve yung lahat. So 15% ng order hindi namin na-serve. At yung mga supplies from the provinces, especially in Visayas and Mindanao, hindi nakakarating sa amin. So in the next few weeks, mukhang wala na kaming ma-deliver sa supermarkets. Dun sa collection din ng receivables namin, dahil nga wala kaming sasakyan to pick up the payments, at yung mga maliliit na clients namin ay nag-close din siya. So mahirap sa amin yung payments, no? So kaya medyo lumalaki ngayon yung receivables namin. Nung regular namin nung before the lockdown, nasa makyato ngayon ng 100% yung receivables namin. So ito yung mahirap kung paano namin sa itawid yung next 3 to 4 months namin, dahil nga madami kaming clients also from Visayas and Mindanao na wala pa talaga kaming nakukulikta, no? More than 2 months na wala kaming collection from them. So ang ginagawa
Bernie,
natin, yeah.
You have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Sige. So ang ginagawa namin ngayon, we talk with our suppliers and also our creditors na baka i-extend muna yung payment, no? So pag collect kami, we also pay them, but medyo unti-unti muna. Next slide, please. Nagyari ngayon, nag-lay off kami. Actually, 8% ng personnel namin ni-lay off namin. 20% na work from home sila. But majority of us is working here, but in reduced working hours. Mahirap din kasi ang mobility dahil nga medyo malalayo yung ibang mga staff. Nagre-reduce kami ng number of hours namin. At moving forward, ang titingnan namin dito is to continue our current marketing setup, but also thinking of online marketing. So we just posted ads in Facebook. At medyo may mga responses, no, the previous 3 days na nag-post kami nung ads sa Facebook, may mga inquiries na. So medyo maganda pala yung online marketing. So we will continue doing that. And pagkatapos nito siguro yung pag-review nga ng business plan namin kasi mukhang in the next 2 months di namin alam kung ano yung mangyayari pa sa operation namin. Next slide please. So what is needed for us to continue operating is siguro to access financing, like for example DBP and Land Bank para ma-improve namin yung liquidity namin. At maybe we can ask our staff to work again, no? Kasi may mga na-lay-off nga kami para tulong na rin dun sa kanila. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. May I now call on our second reactor, the CEO of the Apparel House Company, Inc. Let us all welcome Mrs. Ana Catherine Narciso Bodestin.
Good morning. I am the CEO of Apparel House Company, Inc. We are a garment manufacturing company established 10 years ago and is located in Taytay, Rizal. We cater to the high-end local retailers like Yoya, Rustans, Vanyo Ramoff, Kian Company, Rahul Laurel, to name a few. We also manufacture corporate and medical uniforms and now producing PPEs. We have a total of 120 employees. Most of them are above minimum wage earners and all receiving mandated benefits. We give profit sharing as well to our loyal regular employees. Let me say that it's an honor to represent the garment manufacturing industry. Although this industry is not as big as it used to be in our country, we still make up for a lot of MSMEs. An opportunity like this gives us a sense of relief that this organization is willing to listen to our experiences during these times and are trying to figure out how the government and other institutions can help our situation. Next slide, please. So during the ECQ, we have experienced cancellation of orders. 30% of our orders got canceled and 20% have put their orders on hold until further notice. We have already purchased all the fabrics, trims, and some of the goods were already ready for delivery. Our factory stopped its operation after the March 15 ECQ. Since then, we have been subsidizing all our employees the basic cost of living allowance, COLA, but doing this with no income is not sustainable. We applied for DOLE Camp program and SBWS assistance from SSS last March 31. DOLE informed us that they can no longer accommodate our application as the allocated budget is already exhausted. We are relieved that last May 5, SSS granted our application and distributed 8,000 pesos to all our employees through their ATM accounts. Next slide, please. Our workforce during the ECQ. We applied for an IATF permit to manufacture PPEs in order for our workforce to have income. 12 people, those living nearby the factory, were able to report to work. We would like to increase our capacity, but with ECQ, it is difficult for our workers who live in Antipolo, Pasig, and other towns outside Taytay to come to work due to the following constraints. Total lockdown of our area, no means of transportation, and the initial fear of getting COVID-19 contamination if they go out of their homes. So once the ECQ is lifted, we believe that public transportation will be available and hope that the majority of our workforce can start. Next slide, please. So what are the business challenges that we are facing? Implementation of DOH COVID health protocol. We already implemented the following before ECQ. Physical distancing of 1.5 meters. We rearranged the stations of our workers prior to lockdown. Disinfection, sanitation wherever possible, wearing of masks except when eating, change of clothes before entering the factory, temperature scanner, washing of hands. So we want
Ana,
yes.
Ana, last 2 minutes.
Okay, we want to test all our employees prior to GCQ. How do we go about it? This is an additional expense for the company. Application of remote working, distribution of some machineries to sewers to work at home. This is costly due to the logistics. quality issues because of lack of supervision. We have two shifts to implement social distancing when we are in full force, different break schedules, and assign some days to work from home. Competitive pricing. The going rate of PPEs is so competitive that there's hardly any room for profit. It covers a portion of our overhead like rent, utilities, management, employee salaries, etc. Cost cutting. Review current SOPs, streamlining of operations and employees, focus on increasing the efficiency of employees, renegotiate to lower salaries of our indirect employees, and cancel company activities. And also, we would like to renegotiate our rent. The domestic supply of raw materials, as we continue to accept orders for these PPEs, another problem presents itself. Depleting domestic supply of raw materials is now an issue. Fabrics available in the domestic market are non-medical grade, so clients settle for water-resistant fabrics. Importation of medical grade fabrics, sourcing for medical grade fabric abroad. We need assistance from the government on the following: customs, to facilitate the importation of raw materials for PPEs, tariff-free importation for these to make it available to all hospitals and frontliners. Need for additional funding. Since then, ECQ, the factory, had no income. We spent for the COLA to support our employees. We also requested our lessor to waive our 2 months rent to no avail. Our savings is dwindling. We hope for a government economic stimulus like the proposal of Congressman Joey Salceda is recommending to Congress. We believe if the MSMEs are given stimulus funding from the government, the economy will benefit in the end. We get to hire more workers who are consumers can afford to buy more merchandise, retailers can sell more, we get more orders. As a result, the government can collect more taxes from all levels, including us. The economy will roll. After all, we are a consumer-based economy. So, next slide. So what's the future of garment manufacturing? The fashion garment industry, like travel industry, is forecast to be the last industry to recover. Of course, we are hopeful that the pent-up demand due to lockdown negates this. So to continue our business during the GCQ, we decided to pursue the manufacturing PPEs. Our short-term goals is to get by without workforce contamination of COVID, maintain our current workforce to break even. Long-term goals, to have the business still running when the global situation comes back to normal. So we believe in our business. We continuously audit our existing systems, train our employees to be the best in their craft. Our mission and vision is to produce the highest quality garment at par with international luxury merchandise and to give the best service to our client. We believe we can hurt today's struggles, tomorrow's uncertainties, and look forward to a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. At this point, we will now proceed to the Q&A. As I mentioned earlier, please submit your questions through the Q&A button. We're sorry, but due to time constraints, the webinar participants will not be given the opportunity to speak. May I now call at this point our moderator for today's webinar, the Vice Chair of the MAP Inclusive Growth Committee, and the Chair and Senior Partner of Isla Lipana and Company, PwC Philippines. Let us all welcome the very capable Attorney Alex B. Cabrera.
Thank you very much, Popoy. Good morning to all our attendees. So let me just ask the elephant in the room. Can MSMEs get their hands on that loan? Will there be lesser collaterals being required? Will there be relaxed requirements on bank loan applications? And if their loan is processed, how long will the turnaround be? They run out of cash in a month or two. How long will the loan applications be? And apologies for this rush of questions. Joby, can you attend to these questions, please?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So, I think the first thing that we have to see is that it's a series of actions. No, the first assistance, which is actually very quick, is really the assistance of the deferment of the payments that are due. No, so that automatically it's mandatory. So at least during this period, that's quick. As a matter of fact, in the case of DBP, no, you don't have to do anything, and we will automatically defer the payments, no, that are due within this period. So that should basically provide you with some breathing room, no, while you actually make the application for either further deferments. As I said, in our case, we can defer it for an additional 6 months. That also, we've streamlined the process such that it's now the approval process is actually delegated down to the individual group heads, as was shown in my previous slide. No, so rather than previously, all of this would actually have to go up to head office. The approvals for further deferments for up to 6 months, depending on the specific requirement of our borrowers, can actually be approved at that level. No, so that process is also relatively quick. No, and as of now, in the past 4 weeks, about 10% of our borrowers have applied and have been approved for further extensions beyond what the mandatory deferment requires. No, now so those are the parang the quick things that can be done. No, while we're open to new loans, no, that actually we still have to go through the usual process, unfortunately. No, and particularly given the fact that, as we all know, no, that at this point in time, it's still not very clear, no, as to what will happen. We do need to evaluate these proposals, but we're hoping that the initial deferments, first the 60 days that was mandatorily required, and then subsequently, if there were further deferments that were being made, that this would basically tide you through while the application for the new loan is being processed. No,
Joby, this is a question from our attendees. MSMEs they need about 50,000 to 200, 300,000 loans. So small loans. Can you do something about it, like the level of collateral, maybe dispense away with that, and the turnaround time, can it be in 2 weeks? Yeah, I'm just bringing the question here.
For the micro, as I showed on my slide, no, for the micro, actually, the entity that probably will be able to answer much quicker would actually be the small business corporation. And as a matter of fact, I understand that for this new program, their CARES program, I believe that they do not require collateral, no, but that's probably best, checked with SB Corp. But I would tend to think that for the smaller ones, for those that require about 5 million and less in their borrowings, probably it's best that it will be coursed through SB Corp.
Yeah. So if you don't have collateral, you borrow from the small business corp, and the bigger loans you borrow from DBP. Is that the message?
No,
Joby?
actually, well, not so much on the collateral side as being the message. I think the message there is that, there are a lot of companies that require assistance, no? And I think it's probably better that we sort of divide, where the individual companies would go depending on what their needs are. I think for the smaller accounts, it's probably best that they actually go to SB Corp because they're actually designed for that. No?
Copy.
As against the banks where, again, we also have limited capabilities to process. And if all of you come to us, hindi ba, merong mga hindi ma-attendan all at the same time. So probably I think it's better that the ones that require a little bit less would actually be the ones that go to SB Corp. And then those that require a little bit more, then they go to the banks like Land Bank and ourselves.
Thank you, Joby. Just before I let you go, Joby, for now, persistent questions from our crowd. why is there, if you're in a position to give a view, Joby, why is there a very minimal amount of allotted subsidy or alumni stimulus or loans for food and agriculture compared to the export sector? You know, case in point, 143 billion for export and 10 billion for agri, for instance. Joby,
Yeah,
any views on that?
Well, you know, these are discussions within the House of Representatives. I think they'll be in a better position to address the question to our lawmakers as to why. I understand that all of these numbers and all of these proposals were based also on their own consultations with their constituents, as well as you know, the associations and industries. No, so I think that that question is best asked to our lawmakers.
Thank you very much, Joby. Can I ask some questions to Bob? Bob, in your presentation, you mentioned about sticking to what MSMEs are doing right now, except that they should go to e-commerce. So this idea about not engaging in anything new, you know, it seems to mirror Jack Ma's suggestion for this year, forget your dreams, you know, and just concentrate on staying alive. The question from the crowd is, what about those places that can't be reached by e-commerce, and how? And do you have a suggested strategy for reaching them? Bob or anyone in our panelists care to answer that?
So in hardest hit area, people can just call the company and say, I need this. If they still do not have e-commerce, right? And then allow them to deliver, because it's only a one-to-one ratio between the delivery boy and the customer. So there is social distancing. But the problem is the government is just simply allowing only essential products, meaning food, drug, and necessities. That's my recommendation. Try to reach within your geographical territories muna. That's what I meant, but don't try to do anything that you haven't done before, because that takes time before you can get it implemented.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. But just on that thing, Bob, I've of course known entrepreneurs. I have entrepreneur friends, and they're bold and courageous and creative. So can you share more about that thinking behind don't try new things, which probably goes against the grain of the spirit of the entrepreneur?
In order to be bold, on a normal basis, have guts. But I guess it's an uncertain situation right now, where we don't know where we're going, where we're going to land, how this will all end up. Boldness and guts may not be the qualities that you want to use moving forward. In other words, sigurado na muna. Stay within your competence, stay within your geographical location, and stay within this existing competence that you have.
Thank you, Bob.
Alex, if
yes,
I may add,
yes, Jade.
is that okay?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I think one of the key attributes of MSMEs is that, you know, their size allows them to be nimble. They can certainly reinvent themselves faster, no? So I'd like to advise that use this to your advantage. If there's a way to innovate without, of course, taking unnecessary risks, just like what most startups would do, they would easily pivot. No? So like, for example, in the garments business that Anna mentioned earlier, they're doing expensive or high-priced workloads for the likes of Rostans. But given the ECQ, they pivoted themselves to making PPEs instead. No? So that's the advantage of the MSMEs, is that they're able to adjust quickly compared to the larger organizations, I think. No? And while I do understand where Bobby is coming from, I think one of the things is to really assess, is there still going to be business for you at this time and even after the ECQ is lifted? And if you think that your business is not going to be viable moving forward because of the new normal, then it's probably time to revisit your business plan and strategize anew.
Yes, thank you, Jade. And while you're there, Jade, what do you think in this current environment and survival phase? What do you think are the prospects of deals today? It's M&A, mergers, acquisitions, and partnerships. Is there really a white knight, and should they find one?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Alex. No, so I think based on actual experiences that we have, certainly some of these transactions that we're working with are delayed inevitably because travel is constrained. No, some investors have also resorted to rethinking their plans. And one example is we received yesterday a real estate company who's actually looking to enter into the JV for their expansion project. And they said that, give us a few months. We think that, it's time to take a pause at this time. We'll probably look at this again when things are better. So there are certainly uncertainties that are dampening the investor appetite for investment, and most will conserve their cash. So acquisitions will likely be down, but I believe that there will be rise in strategic partnerships as people will find a way to work together, share resources, even co-develop and co-brand their products. No. However, having said that, financial investors and private equities still have a lot of dry powder. And some of them will actually take advantage of opportunities for more affordable valuations. Some may even be looking for distressed M&As. No? But just make sure that you deal with someone who will give you a fair valuation instead of someone who will capitalize on your weakness as of the moment. So what you can do, of course, is identify these opportunities for value creation and then convince the investor that you can deliver. For medium-sized enterprises, you will probably continue to attract some investors. But for small companies, I think it may be better to enter into strategic partnerships, especially at this time.
Thank you, Jade. Going back to Bob, there are questions here about your experience on the attitude of mall owners, considering the difficulty in distribution, delivery, and the like. Although, Bob, I know that you're a bit constrained because your goods are considered non-food or non-essential. But what have you observed about mall owners' attitude in light of ECQ and the expected GCQ?
The malls are without us, they won't exist. They're very commensurate on what's being experienced. So that's why in March, April, May, they have waived rentals. We're looking beyond the rentals, like common area expenses still there. And then, of course, when we reopen, with the possibility that customers will not come in, and if they start charging full rentals, as a retailer, we might as well close because we know we cannot cover even the rental and much more fielding people, full complement of manpower, which will not, the sales will not materialize. So I'll just end up with a loss. So the malls are aware of this. So we are now discussing certain packages and how they can further partner with us. One of the options that we're looking at is percentage of sales rental. So no sales, no rent. May sales, may bayad. So that's one option. The other one will be some sort of a subsidized rent. Can open two rates and partner and no rental for those who cannot open. Malls are willing to discuss about this, and we will be sitting down with them.
Bob, did I get you correctly earlier? You were advocating to allow everyone to operate. So if you are a retail outlet, for instance, and your area is still under the ECQ, that you should nevertheless be allowed to engage in e-commerce and trade online, yes. And you should not be. Can you talk about that, Bob?
Yes, I think this is very important. And even in the United States, they realized this. That's why they did not segregate allowing retail stores by whether it is essential or non-essential product. They allowed all products, essential or non-essential, for so long as you do it online. So no physical contact on the ordering, and only 2 persons involved in the delivery guy and the customer. So my position, if DTI and the IATF is willing on this, allow all businesses to operate medium, small, micro, for so long as they can do it online. That's one option. Now, those areas where will be under GCQ and the malls can open for so long as they can practice the health protocols, curbside pickup, or waiting areas adequate for people to line up comfortably and with distance. Allow a limited store operations also. But for online e-commerce, wala na dapat distinction whether essential or non-essential. This is the only way we can help get a little cash flow, at least pambayad sa mga tao. It's not profit anymore. We're not looking for profit on this
yes,
effort.
Yes, and no one is objecting. Can I quickly go back to Joby? Joby, can you further enlighten on the participation of field guarantee? What advantage does that give? How can they access that? Does it make things easier for loan applications because there's someone giving the guarantee?
Well, it should, no? I think the quick answer to that question is it should. Because as I mentioned, the field guarantee actually improves the risk weighting of the loan, no? So from a 50% risk weighting, it goes down to 0. No, so that will facilitate the credit risk of the bank. So therefore, it should assist. Now, the way it works is that actually you can have initial discussions with PhilExim, although actually it has to be discussed also with the bank, no, because the PhilExim actually negotiates with the bank, no, on the documents for that, because essentially there has to be some risk sharing between the bank and PhilExim, no. So an initial discussion will have to be with the bank and say that you're interested to actually have PhilExim come in to guarantee a portion of the loan, because PhilExim will only, as I presented in my slides, PhilExim will only guarantee up to 50%, no, and only up to 50 million. No, so may restrictions din siya. And of course, there's a cost to it. No, they charge 1% guarantee fee. No, so there's a cost to it, but that cost should actually be. I think the way to look at it is that it would have been deducted naman from the cost of the loan to you, no, because the risk would have gone down for the bank.
Alex, Joby,
Alex?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Francis. President Francis.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, as part of this stimulus package, insofar as field guarantee is concerned, I think there is a proposal to increase its paid-up capital to 28 billion pesos. And in addition to that, there is a special fund called the Special Guarantee Fund to beef up the guarantee capability of PGC. And to top it all, I think there is a proposed provision which requires PGC to relax its rules and regulations in order to enable MSMEs and critically impacted businesses to avail of its guarantee program. So those are the refinements and additions that hopefully we will see into this law.
Thank you, President Francis, for that important input. Joby, you have a SME here, Glowcorp, who's actually in the very good business in food, and probably just one of the few SMEs who are thriving nowadays. But he has a bad case of receivables accumulation, and if your approach for factoring of these receivables is that easy to approve for you? Will you buy their receivables, Joby?
Well, at the moment, the program is not a factoring program. At least the program that we have currently is not a factoring program. No, the way that our current response program is set up is really, as I said, it's primarily, if they're an existing borrower of ours, it's really through deferment of the payments that are there. And if they're not a borrower of ours, then we will be happy to actually explore new funding for them. No, as long as, again, as was also already mentioned by Jade, the idea here is that what we need to see is that the hiccups that they are experiencing is a temporary hiccup, but then the business will still continue once this hiccup, we get over this hump. No, so that's what we will be taking a looking at when we look at new loans for these companies.
Thank you, Joby. We just have room for a couple or a few questions more. Can I go to Catherine? And Catherine, can I ask you to share your experience, before COVID or maybe nowadays, also during this time of COVID, with the Bureau of Customs in terms of facilitation of your importations? And can you be more specific about what you're experiencing? Just share, Catherine.
Sure.
Alex, Catherine, before that, you also mentioned in your presentation some questions that you wanted to be answered. Maybe you can also ask this again so that this can be addressed.
Sure. With regards to customs, prior to the ECQ, we haven't experienced a grave problem with regards to getting our raw materials into the country. Well, the normal or the usual delays would be during the Christmas or Chinese New Year. But then it's just now where even my suppliers are saying that there are no agencies who are actually operating at this time. So that's a big hindrance for us to import our raw materials. So for our concerns with regards to how these materials will come in, there are just a few suppliers in select countries who are actually open. They are willing to do sea freight or air freight, but of course, given that prices are competitive nowadays, you would want to opt for sea freight, but we're assuming that once the goods arrive, these items will be held at customs until there is already free trade. Part of my questions, Tito Popo, for our, just let me check. We would want to know also, like, since GCQ is just around the corner, we are wondering how we can test our employees. Is there any LGU or institution that can assist us to test employees prior to opening our doors to our regular employees. That's one.
Catherine, maybe I can be of help there. There's this project called Project Art being done by Go Negosyo now, where they are offering rapid test kits for corporations, associations, even barangays. If you want to donate to certain barangays, they have a list of the rapid test kits, medicine that can be availed of. I think in the range of only about 400 to 500 pesos per employee. Maybe I'll forward to you the secretariat number and the contact person of Project Art, which is called Antibody Rapid Test Kits. That's why it's ART, under the Go Negosyo. And they are inviting different companies, associations, even cooperatives to participate. So you can avail of volume discounts or volume pricing for this. I don't know the exact arrangement in terms of how the test will be done and how the results will be taken. But I will give Arnold, our secretariat, the number and the contact person for this.
Hello, Bobby.
Yes.
Yes, MAP is a supporter member of Project Art. In fact, we issued the circular to our members on how they can support, if you recall that. Arnold has the details. But the question that was raised was also a question that was raised, I think, when we did a webinar on preparing the workforce for the workforce reentry. And the answer was any physician, even general practitioners, rapid testing, antibody rapid testing must be done under the supervision of a physician. Then it was asked, what physician? And the answer was, and I think it still remains to be the answer, is any general physician can be the one doing the supervision. But it is necessary that it is a supervised testing even at the company premises.
Okay.
So I think Arnold can forward the details of that Project Art. It's a very active group now. Try to get companies to be members or supporters of the project.
Yes. I'd like to also to suggest that to exercise caution in all of these kits that are being sold now or being offered. I'm not a medical person, because there are some questions on accuracy and efficacy. So I would presume do some more research or inquiries or second opinions from others, especially in the medical field, which of these tests are effective and accurate.
That's one advantage of joining Project Art, because they have a list of those antibody red tests, because there are a lot of unreliable test kits in the market, and therefore Project Art has come up with a list for the guidance of the public.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, President Francis and Bob. Just a question from the crowd. Yes, Popoy, are you saying something?
Yeah, there's just one question from one of my classmates, which was given to me. Question is addressed to Joby, DBP. Can NGOs borrow from DBP for relending to the members of this NGO? This particular NGO has about more than 1,000 MSME members. Joby, what is your answer to that question? Can NGOs, then they can relent to their members?
Yes, the quick answer to that actually is yes. As I mentioned earlier, we're not really geared to deal directly with the very, very retail micro borrowers, and the way that we do it within DBP is we have a wholesale program, and that wholesale program is precisely that, So we actually lend to NGOs, to savings and loans, to rural banks, basically those that actually have as their typical client base these small companies that otherwise we would not be able to address due to our own processing constraints. So yes, we can do that.
Joby, just a mundane question here from our attendee. Are all banks required to impose a moratorium on loan and interest payments? And they have probably post-dated checks, and maybe the banks keep depositing them anyway. Joby?
That's actually a requirement of law under the Bayanihan Act. No, so all payments that fall due during the ECQ are automatically deferred. As I said, in our case, you don't even have to do anything. No, as a matter of fact, what we do is we send you a letter to basically say, if you don't want to, because of course, if you want to pay, we will of course accept your payment. So we actually send all our borrowers a letter basically saying, if you don't want to defer your payments, okay, please write us. But if we don't hear from you, we will automatically defer your payment because that's under the law. So you really can't do anything. And that applies to all banks and all institutions that fall under the supervision of the Bangko Sentral.
Thank you, Joby. Yes.
Joby, this deferment is good only for 3 months, no, unless the Bayanihan Act is extended by Congress. Am I right?
That's correct. It's actually valid only up to while the ECQ is outstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it actually gets lifted by May 15, payments that are due May 16 are no longer covered.
So it's limited.
That's correct. That's correct.
Can that be extended, Joby? Medyo tight yun for MSME. May 16, it's just a week from now.
Just around, yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I said, that's the provision of the law. No. Now I can only speak for myself and for Land Bank, where we have, as I said, provided deferments beyond that. No. In the case of Land Bank, they can go up to a 1-year deferment. In our case, we can go up to a 6-month deferment. No, over and above what is required, mandatorily required by the law.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joby. Jade, question for you. If there are any MSMEs looking for investors or partners, how should they go about it? Can they, for instance, go to you and can you render the service now and bill later? Jade?
Thanks for that, Alex. No, certainly we have been working with SMEs, including startups, where we have what we call Venture Hub Philippines. And so what this does is really to work with smaller companies and have quite a unique fee structure. In most cases, for M&As, a lot of the fees are really back-ended. No? So we only charge a fee if there is a successful transaction. But apart from the M&A, I think a lot of our SMEs now, just judging on the questions being asked to Joby, are really interested to get financing instead. No, probably because their companies are still too small to attract investors. And so the question is, given the hundreds or thousands of applications that these banks will receive, what will actually make your application stand out? And we'd also be happy to work with MSMEs on this. Certainly, what the bankers will be looking for will be the continued viability of the business. So a good business plan and a credible financial forecast, for example, can be used as a basis. Of course, if they are operating in the essential industries, then as Joby mentioned before, they will be prioritized, or at least they go to the upper portion of the stockpile. No? So those are some of the areas where we can help MSMEs on, and we'd be happy to structure, something that is acceptable to both.
Thank you, Jade. Just before we put this session to a close, can I check on President Francis or Popoy if you have any other questions or concerns that you want to raise?
Thank you. Hello. Yeah.
Francis, again. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify to avoid any misunderstanding that while the loans are deferred for the period of ECQ, Joby, can you correct me if I'm wrong? The interest will continue to run.
That is
and that
correct.
interest can be paid post-PCQ either in full or on a staggered basis. Parang hindi lang ma-mislead yung members natin.
Yes, that is correct, Francis. No, just to clarify, it is a deferment of the payment. No.
Yes.
So therefore, it will still be due subsequently, and as a matter of fact, interest will continue to accrue with regard to those amounts. No, what is not allowed by the law is to charge interest on interest.
On interest, yes.
Yeah, but interest. The regular interest will continue to be charged, but payable after the ECQ. No, as I mentioned, for interest that would have fallen due during the ECQ, you can defer that by having it paid over the remaining life of your loan. No, so pwedeng i-amortize siya. No, and if what falls due naman is principal, that principal is actually added to the end of your current facility, effectively extending the maturity. No, so pero yung interest will be paid, and that is why nga, as I said, there are a few of our borrowers who basically say, no, we don't want to actually have it deferred, kasi that will be additional interest on us, especially kung meron naman siyang cash flow. They would rather just pay it when it is due, no? So that's why we do have to write them. And as I said, what we do is we wrote to all our borrowers and said, if you don't want to have it deferred, please write back to us and say that you don't want to have it deferred, because otherwise we will assume you want to have it deferred and we will defer it, no?
And Joby, is my reading correct that this deferment applies not only to loans from the banks, but also to credit cards, di ba?
That's correct. It's really for anything that is due to any entity that is supervised by the BSP. So that includes yung sa credit cards, even consumer loans, no? Hindi lang
pati pawn shops, pati pawn shops, diba?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, yeah.
Pati real estate payment, real estate payments as well, Joby.
I don't think they fall under I don't think they fall under the Bangko Sentral, no. But I do understand that there are some companies, no, real estate companies that have actually deferred payments for their borrowers, no.
But
as a matter of fact, that's the reason why some of them have come to us and said they also need a deferral because they have passed it on to their borrowers.
But Joby, if you are a real estate, you bought a real estate, let's say a condo unit, diba? Or your business bought an office unit, and you got a loan to pay the installments of that office unit, that's covered by the deferment.
That is correct. That is correct.
Yes. Okay, that's very important for small businesses.
Yep. Thank you for the clarificatory questions and remarks, Popoy. Anything else from you before we close it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, there are two questions from Bruce Rodriguez of ABS-CBN News. The first question is, earlier it was mentioned some banks are still hesitant to lend to some MSMEs. What else can fiscal and monetary authorities do to remedy this situation? Maybe Joby can answer this.
Yeah, I think if there's any reluctance, it's really because of the risk involved, no? And I think the move that's being done now by the government to increase the capability of field guarantee, to provide guarantees, is actually a move in the right direction, no? Because that will help reduce the risk, no? So, and then of course on the regulatory front, the things that the BSP are doing, as I already pointed out, like reducing the risk weighting on loans to MSMEs, as well as the making it eligible for the reserve requirements. These are also moves in the right direction. No, but I think primarily it would really be the ability for other parties within government to actually share the risk. And I think the move for Phil guarantee would help in that regard.
In addition to that, under the proposed law, it's not the assistance will not be limited to small business enterprises, but also to some big business enterprises, like those involved in aviation and tourism industry. I think there's appropriation for that in order for these big businesses to avail of loans to help them get up. For example, like the airline industry, which other countries have also been doing. I think the other sector that will benefit from this proposed law is the agri and fisheries business. No, so there are bits and pieces. There are a lot in the stimulus package that's being deliberated upon.
Yeah, but prior to this proposed law, right now, Joby, can you confirm that there's no allocation for big businesses in this financial stimuli? All for SMEs?
Well, I think right now the most of the programs that have been done were really mga pantawid programs. No, it's really primarily for the workers who are affected. No, so rather than, if you look at it, the main assistance that's being given now is really directly to the people involved. So in the case of itong like the SBWS that we're involved in, no, it's really giving, while it's helping indirectly the employers, the MSMEs, the actual assistance is really directed to the employees themselves. No, so and I think in that case, so related to your question, is there actually a program specifically for the larger corporations? Maybe yung directly from the government, maybe wala, ano? Pero yung sa amin, for example, yung sa response program namin, and I think even the one for Land Bank, no, I don't think we exclude big companies. Again, we're all in this together, no, and we're all interconnected. So I'm sure that even the larger companies also feel some pain. And as I said, we have seen some of them actually come to us and actually ask for deferments beyond what the regulatory requirement was. No? And they do qualify under our program.
Thank you, Joby. At this point, we are actually interfering with the people's lunch. So if you will allow me, Popoy, I will try to close this session by thanking our speakers. Can I go to that, Popoy?
Okay.
Okay. So on behalf of the MAP Board of Governors, we'd like to thank our speakers this morning and now going into the afternoon, Mr. Bobby Claudio Sr. Of Toby's group, Joby De Leon Di Mayuga of DBP, Jade, Ms. Jade Rojas Divina Gracia of PwC, Bernie Berondo of Glow Corp, and Catherine Narciso Modestin of the Apparel House Company. I hope we all learned lessons this afternoon, but I'd like to assure our participants that the effort of the Inclusive Growth Committee of the MAP will not stop here. We will collate the issues, the questions, and see what we can come out in terms of recommendations either to the IITF, to the DTI, or to working with government lending institutions as well. So on behalf of my chairman, Popoy, Governor Sai Tatanco of the Inclusive Growth, and President Francis Lim, thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your lunch and have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bobby, thank you. Boy.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you.
May I just add, thank you to Arnold Salvador, our executive director, and all the MAP staff who were involved. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
I
to
second
everyone.
I second the motion.
Okay, we adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.